At last, Harley-Davidson has woken up and produced the bike that riders have wanted for years. They have released the latest addition to the Sportster lineup in the form of the new Nightster. Dare we say it? Welcome back, Harley. Now we can finally start taking you seriously. In this video, we look at the new Harley-Davidson Nightster. One of our colleagues was in Spain for the official launch of this important bike. This is quite a big deal, as it's the replacement for this Sportster, a bike that has a huge following around the world and has an almost cult-like status. The outgoing Sportster, that's been around since 1957, was getting very long in the tooth, both in terms of emissions and overall performance. But in modernizing the Sportster, have Harley managed to retain the essence of the original machine? The good news is that we got to ride the Nightster. We'll go through the important details and tell you what it feels like to ride. But before we start, let's review the launch video that Harley-Davidson produced for the Nightster. Most unlike recent Harley-Davidson launch videos, the one for the Nightster was devoid of the usual outlandish claims and marketing hype. This was a refreshing change. Thankfully, Oberführer Zeitz, Harley's CEO, was nowhere to be seen. The introduction video was actually rather enjoyable. Harley-Davidson made it very clear that the Nightster would be an ideal platform for customization. In fact, they showcased the Nightster through a few custom builds that they commissioned from specialists around the world. There's a bobber, a flat tracker, and a cafe racer. Those bikes all look gorgeous. Harley-Davidson also leaned into the long heritage of the Sportster, but managed to keep their usual exaggerated superlatives to an absolute minimum. The overall styling of the new Nightster is a massive improvement on the rather strange-looking Sportster S that Harley released last year. The Nightster is the bike that Harley-Davidson desperately needs in its range, not just for their own domestic market, but more importantly in the lucrative European market, where discerning riders favour high-powered, quality and great handling bikes. The defining feature of the Nightster is the new engine. It's a 975cc liquid-cooled 60-degree variant of the Harley-Davidson Revolution Max V-twin. So it has quite a lot in common with that 1250cc version that's found in the Pan America and the Sportster S. The engine is liquid-cooled with variable valve timing, which makes it feel like a thoroughly modern V-twin, rather than the standard agricultural feel of the old Sportster. This means that the Nightster's engine revs more freely, resulting in a smooth and consistent spread of power. The engine produces 89 brake horsepower at around 7,500 RPM and a very healthy 92 Newton meters of peak torque. Both of these bring it in line with the competition. Out on the road, the Nightster is a completely different riding experience than that of the old Sportster. There's plenty of guts at the low end, but it will also keep climbing up to the red line. We found that there was enough peak power for road riding. The engine is also quite smooth, which is completely out of character for a big American V-twin. The engine actually has a refined feel, something we wouldn't normally associate with a Harley-Davidson. It certainly doesn't vibrate as much as Harley-Davidsons normally do, and we really rather like that. It makes the Nightster far less tiring to ride for prolonged periods. So if you're actually looking for that shake and roll from a Sportster, the Nightster may not be for you. Another big upgrade for the Nightster is the chassis. Gone is the heavy steel cradle in favour of the use of the engine as a stressed member. This means that the Nightster is much lighter than the old Sportster. It's still a heavy bike though, at 221 kilograms, but it's a good 35 kilograms lighter than than the Iron 883 Sportster. The overall chassis is very low slung and places the bike's weight closer to the ground. This low down weight is further accentuated by the positioning of the fuel tank. It's now directly under the seat. The petrol cap is also located under the seat and requires that you flip the seat up in order to fill it up. The petrol tank holds 11.7 litres, and according to Harley that should be good for around 225 kilometres. The fake tank now actually houses the airbox, and the design echoes the traditional Sportster look. All of these changes combine to shift the weight low down. On the move, this makes the bike feel light and nimble, whilst the handling is so much better than the old Sportster. The Nightster is equipped with conventional shower right way up forks at the front and dual shocks at the rear, both with preload adjustment. It's a fairly basic setup, but they do the job. Braking is provided by a single front disc and a 4-piston Brembo caliper. As we have said so many times before, why do Harley insist on just one brake disc on a heavy bike? Having said that, the brakes were adequate but not great. The Nightster has inherited some of the good stuff from the Sportster S. However, the Nightster is far more comfort oriented. There's a nice seat, mid-fat mounted foot pegs and a flat handlebar. Naturally, Harley-Davidson already has a whole array of optional extras such as seats and handlebars, so you can dial the Nightster in to your personal preferences. In the tech department, the old Sportster had virtually nothing. Thankfully, the new Nightster comes with some tech in order to compete with other bikes in the market. Once again, Harley-Davidson have kept the tech to a bare minimum, but they've covered the basics. There are 3 rider modes: Rain, Road and Sport. Rain mode is exceptionally soft, which should only suit newer riders and nobody else. You get ABS, but it's not switchable, and traction control that is. The dash is a conventional analog dial with an LCD insert, and this is very clean looking. The switches are very Harley-Davidson. There's keyless ignition, which is very convenient, and there's self-cancelling indicators, which we hate. Predictably, Harley-Davidson have messed up on the price yet again. The Nightster will cost you a whopping $13,499 US before taxes and fees. To put that in perspective, the Indian Scout Bobber, probably the Nightster's closest rival, costs $11,499 US. The Indian has much more standard equipment and comes with 100 brake horsepower. Also, both the Triumph Bonneville T120 and the Speed Twin are over $1,000 US less than the Nightster, and they too are far better equipped. To emphasize the point yet further, the Honda Rebel 1100 easily undercuts the price of the Nightster by over $3,000 US. Considering that Harley-Davidson have really positioned the Nightster as a solid platform for customization, this is where an even bigger issue with price comes in. By the time you've personalized your Nightster, the price will be way north of $16,000, and that's just ridiculous for what is ultimately an entry-level bike. So having said all that, what do we think? The question remains is whether the Nightster is a worthy successor to the Sportster. It has many styling similarities, but the ride is completely different. The Nightster is much lighter, much more powerful, and handles far better. It is Harley-Davidson's interpretation of what a modern-day Sportster should be. Whether this Nightster manages to capture the imagination of the Sportster faithful remains to be seen. Thanks very much for watching, and please let us know what you think of the new Harley-Davidson Nightster. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.